Seriously? You're upset because you wanted to eat steak that badly? But why should I have to get you steak? After all, you're not family.
Nancy, my mother-in-law, whispered this to me so close that her lips almost touched my cheek. At my brother-in-law Bob's engagement party, I was the only one who didn't get steak. It seemed like forgetful Nancy had accidentally missed ordering mine. In front of everyone, she apologized, saying it wasn't on purpose, but what she told me was how she really felt. Well then, I'll be leaving.
What?
Nancy looked at me wide-eyed as I stood up. I don't have the nerve to stick around when I'm told I'm not family. They were a dysfunctional family to begin with. If I pushed even in the slightest, everything will fall apart. My name is May Austin, 35 years old. I'm a stay-at-home mom with a 7-year-old daughter. My husband John's relatives sometimes say, without seeming to mean any harm, "You should be grateful to John for letting you be a stay-at-home mom in this day and age." But in reality, I don't lead a leisurely stay-at-home mom life at all.
Hey, what were you doing not answering my calls?
Nancy frequently calls me. That time I was shopping and didn't notice her call.
Shopping? Is that so? You just didn't want to answer my call, did you? You always treat me so coldly. Yes, you can't be bothered with an old woman like me.
That's not true. So what can I do for you? I hastily changed the subject. Nancy's tone grew even more spiteful.
Oh, right. Buy some bouillon for me.
Again. She frequently asks for simple errands like this. Shopping, changing light bulbs, giving rides, and so on. Is there anything else you need besides the bouillon?
No. Even if you bring things I don't need, they'll just go to waste. So don't buy unnecessary stuff. You always buy things I didn't ask for and waste money. Really.
It would be easier if I could get everything done in one go, but that's how it is. Because of this, I end up going to my in-laws' house 3 or 4 times a week, sometimes as many as 6. Even though it's only about a 30-minute drive, this frequency is a big burden. That night, John came home from work visibly annoyed.
Hey, Mom was crying again.
Ignoring our daughter Lily greeting him, the first thing he mentioned was Nancy. Lily sensed that now wasn't the time to approach John, so she started watching TV.
You can't even follow simple shopping instructions. Mom asked for chicken bouillon, but you brought beef bouillon. She was sad about that. In her hometown, chicken bouillon is the norm. You're indirectly disrespecting her hometown.
I don't even know where Nancy's hometown is, and I don't recall ever having chicken bouillon at their house. Our current residence shouldn't be a place where chicken bouillon is the norm either. When I delivered the bouillon, she complained about it being late or cheap, but she didn't mention anything about the type. She probably came up with this accusation after I left. John sighed in exaggeration.
Is coming from New York really that fancy?
The conversation suddenly jumped. I was born and raised in New York. According to Nancy, I come off as high and mighty.
It's already been a year since we moved here. Stop acting like a city snob and stop belittling Mom.
That's not my intention. Until just a year ago, I thought John's parents were quite non-intrusive and easygoing. That might have been because it took 5 hours one way from their house to ours in New York, which allowed for a good physical and emotional distance. John went to college in New York and stayed there for work. We met, got married, and Lily was born. A typical happy family. We lived without any major arguments, thanks to John's gentle and modest nature. But everything turned upside down about a year ago because of a call from Nancy.
Hey, John, what should we do? Bob just turned 40.
Nancy called him the day after his brother Bob's birthday, crying. She had a big celebration on his birthday, but the next day she couldn't handle the reality of him being in his 40s.
All of Bob's classmates are married and have kids in middle or high school. Why doesn't Bob want to get married? What if he stays single forever? I'll never get to hold Bob's grandkids. I don't want that. I want a lively retirement surrounded by grandkids.
Even though I was sitting next to John, I could hear Nancy's cries. Her voice was so loud that I worried it might break John's eardrum. But John didn't move the phone away from his ear, listening very intently. I still remember that. At that moment, John must have already made up his mind. About 3 months later, John suddenly announced,
I want to move back to my hometown. I've already found a job there, and I've submitted my resignation here. Please, May, come with me.
I was truly stunned, and seeing me John reassured me on a completely unimportant matter.
Don't worry about a place to live. Our family home is big.
That night, we talked through the night, and by the time we noticed, it was morning. I wanted to think it was a dream, but unfortunately, it was reality. John had already resigned, so there was no turning back. With Lily about to start elementary school, we were busy making arrangements for that too. There was no elementary school near his family home, so I managed to convince John to rent an apartment in a nearby small town.
An apartment when we have a family home already, really? Wow, 30 minutes from home. Well, it's better than the 5 hours we do right now.
John grumbled. I was dragged around by John's impulsive decisions. I wasn't happy that John was dissatisfied with the compromise of living near an elementary school.
Well, all right.
John finally convinced himself and smiled his usual kind smile.
Sorry for the trouble. Thank you so much, May. My hometown is great, unlike New York. I want Lily to grow up freely in the rich nature.
Although I wasn't completely happy with John's pushy ways, I agreed that I wanted Lily to grow up freely. Since we decided to move, I shifted my mindset positively. I wanted to get along with John's parents and Bob, whom we hadn't seen much. But my positive feelings vanished completely after just 1 year of moving. Dealing with Nancy's constant nasty behavior stressed me out, and I was mad at John for always taking her side. I get it that it's easier to just listen to what she has to say as she cries far too often, but I feel that it's wrong for John to make me stay put and simply endure it all. When I caught a cold and couldn't meet Nancy's demands for about a week, she spread rumors to John and all the relatives saying May is avoiding me because she doesn't want to see me. Nancy, who cries easily, was much more trusted than the outsider daughter-in-law from the city. A meddling relative scolded me, saying, "You should respect your husband's parents."
Hey, don't make Mom cry. A fever would go down if you just take medicine. Don't use it as an excuse to avoid her.
John even said this to me.
And stop coughing like you're sick. I bought you throat lozenges, so make sure you're better by the time we visit on Sunday. It'd be terrible if you spread germs to my elderly parents.
I couldn't understand John. He heated up some instant chicken soup for me and bought throat lozenges. He took Lily out to eat and helped her brush her teeth before bed. His actions make him a good, loving husband. But why does he change so much when it comes to Nancy?
Mom bought Lily a dress, and guess what? She ordered it online.
John excitedly shook my shoulder as I lay in bed.
As you know, Mom can't use a smartphone. So guess who she asked to order it for her? Haha, she asked my brother.
John got excited alone as if he was about to share a funny story.
I feel bad for making the oldest son of the Austin family do chores.
Ignoring Lily sleeping in the next room, John laughed loudly. Now I understand why John suddenly wanted to move back to the countryside a year ago. It was to give Nancy a lively retirement. Actually, it seems that John grew up in the shadow of his brother Bob, never able to match him in anything. Whether it was in academics, in sports, or even in terms of personality, Bob was always better than John. Because of this, Nancy always doted on Bob. John had always complained that Nancy treated him as an afterthought. That's probably why he moved to New York.
Mom must be sad that her favorite son is still single. Since Lily is her only grandchild, we need to let her spoil her as much as possible.
He was driven by this strange sense of duty. Every Sunday, we all went to his parents' house. For some reason, every time we visited, small misfortunes befell me. Nancy would accidentally spill ketchup on my bag or place a garbage bag right on my shoes. Also, there were several hairs mixed in with the food. My hamburger was the only one that was undercooked. It was a clear parade of harassment.
Nancy is such a klutz. You should be more careful.
Oh, Nancy, you really are something.
I couldn't understand how John's father, Tom, and John himself could laugh in these situations.
Oh my, I'm such a klutz. Sorry, May.
Nancy would act all cutesy, tapping her head. At first, I forced a polite smile, but now my face would twitch in discomfort. Then Nancy would pout and quiver her chin.
I didn't do it on purpose. Sorry, May. You're scaring me.
Nancy would cry, John would defend her, and I'd end up as the villain. This was the usual pattern. Despite this, John needed me to join in his filial duties. Maybe it's that John is also rather stressed, being put in a difficult position, being in between his wife and his own mother. He often gets stomach aches after visiting his parents' house. It's hard to understand John's desire to maintain such close ties with Nancy. One day, I got a rare call from Bob.
Actually, I'm getting married.
We didn't usually interact much, but I was happy he told me personally. Congratulations. I sincerely wished him well. Right after that, I couldn't help but imagine how John would feel about this, since he'd always had some sort of inferiority complex towards Bob. From now on, he won't be able to look down on him for being single. Would he be upset? Or would he finally calm down?
May, are you all right?
Oh yes, sorry, I was just spacing out.
No, that's not what I was trying to say.
Bob's tone became firm as if he had made up his mind. Then he shared an unexpected plan. Nancy was over the moon about Bob's engagement. She told everyone, even strangers on the street, my eldest son is getting married. She was eager to throw an engagement party. I was busier than ever helping with the preparations.
Listen to Mom properly. May, you're an experienced daughter-in-law.
John urged me, not wanting me to be outdone by the new bride. On the day of the party, the living room was filled with colorful balloons and a banner that read, "Congratulations on your engagement." Bob hung up. I was sweating buckets as I prepared the feast. By the way, Nancy is a commander who only gives orders without lifting a finger.
Hey, cut the carrots into decorative shapes. People will think I'm a terrible cook. Or are you slicing them into plain circles on purpose? To make me look bad? You want Bob's fiancé to dislike me, don't you?
Even on a day like this, her paranoid nagging doesn't stop. Cooking, cleaning, decorating the room. I ran around doing everything according to Nancy's instructions. I finally got to sit down when Bob and his fiancée, Kelly, arrived. Nancy, wearing a flower corsage Bob had given her, was in such a good mood that she seemed like she might float away.
Oh my, what a lovely young lady. You can tell someone's upbringing by looking at their face. I'm so happy to have a nice girl like Kelly joining our family.
John whispered to me.
Kelly is 40 years old. Calling a 40-year-old woman a young lady is ridiculous.
I pretended not to hear. John, looking displeased, propped his elbow on the table.
Come on, let's eat. I was so enthusiastic that I made too much food.
Nancy proudly brought the dishes I had prepared to the table. How can she lie so easily?
And for a celebration, we must have steak. Ta-da! I splurged on high-quality sirloin.
Nancy started serving the steak to everyone.
Here you go, Tom. No sauce for you. Bob, I know you love potatoes, so I gave you extra. John, you rarely get to eat good steak, so don't hold back. Lily, here's the kids' portion. Kelly, I hope you like it.
Then Nancy placed the last steak in front of herself.
Please dig in.
Nancy urged, but there was no steak in front of me. Where's my steak?
Oh, did I? Oh no, I must have miscounted. Oh dear, May, I'm so sorry.
Nancy apologized in exaggeration. John immediately backed her up.
Mom is such a scatterbrain, but you don't need to apologize so much. May is very understanding and patient with you.
Nancy tapped her head, and Tom and John laughed.
I'm such a klutz. It wasn't on purpose. Sorry, May.
Nancy leaned closer to me, apologizing again. When I stayed silent, she moved her face so close that her lips almost touched my cheek. She whispered softly so only I could hear.
Are you mad? Did you want steak that badly? But why should I have to get you steak? You're not family.
Her foul breath hit my skin directly, leaving me with nothing but discomfort. Goosebumps rose all over my body. And I'll leave.
What?
Nancy's eyes widened as I stood up. I don't have the nerve to stay after being told I'm not family.
What? Why all of a sudden?
Nancy couldn't hide her surprise, not expecting me to say I was leaving. Usually, I would just take her petty insults with a sad face. So she probably planned to enjoy watching me sulk while she ate steak. Such refined tastes for entertainment. John's face clearly showed his discomfort, but in front of Bob and Kelly, he couldn't show his anger and jokingly nudged me.
What's wrong, May? Did you want steak that badly? They say there's nothing scarier than a grudge over food. Haha. But come on, you're an adult. Move on. It's a happy occasion, and you should set an example as the senior daughter-in-law.
John would be the one embarrassed by my behavior. His wide eyes conveyed that he wanted me to act like the perfect wife. Bob and Kelly already looked quite shocked, so trying to cover it up now would only make things worse. It's rude for an outsider to intrude on such a happy occasion. Nancy said I'm not family, so I'm leaving. John's forced smile began to crack. Maintaining his fragile smile, John asked Nancy in an overly calm voice.
Mom, did you really say that?
Nancy immediately denied it.
I didn't say that. I was just apologizing for messing up the steak order. Everyone here is my precious family. I would never say something so hurtful as "you're not family."
Crying is a cheap tactic. It inevitably makes her seem pitiable. John, slightly relieved, patted Nancy's hunched back.
See, Mom didn't say that. May must have misheard. So, just apologize to Mom and let's end this.
John patted Nancy's back as she cried and gave me a gentle look. Playing the smart husband who mediates between his wife and mother, John puffed out his chest toward Bob. Even though Bob had just gotten married, John had the undeniable advantage of 8 years of marriage. The newlyweds wouldn't easily surpass him. John's smug look showed his determination to keep his position. Bob and Kelly exchanged an awkward smile. "Lily, we're going home."
Okay, Mom.
John's smug expression crumbled instantly.
What? Why are you leaving?
"Because I'm not family."
You're still saying that? I told you, May, you misheard.
John's persistence was irritating. I pulled a sheet of paper from my bag.
What's this?
"You can see for yourself. It's a divorce paper." John's hands shook excessively as he held the divorce paper. "Nancy doesn't recognize me as family, and you clearly value her more than me. So let's make it official and not be family anymore."
What? Huh?
John, seemingly unable to handle unexpected situations, couldn't respond properly. He slumped, looking smaller and defeated. Nancy raised her voice.
May, I'm so sorry. It's my fault for messing up the steak order and making you so angry. I'll be more careful from now on. Please forgive me. I'm sorry, May.
Nancy kept apologizing through her tears. She held my hand and buried her face in my shoulder. Her dirty tears stained my shoulder. In between sobs, she whispered her true feelings.
Don't think you'll get away with this. You've ruined Bob's important engagement party. Once Kelly marries, we won't need a failure of a daughter-in-law like you. If you're going to interfere with my happiness, get out, you outsider.
When I looked at Nancy's face, she was unmistakably smiling. I smiled back and nodded. "Okay, this outsider is leaving," I declared cheerfully. Nancy was so shocked that she stopped her fake crying. I grabbed my things and took Lily's hand, leaving quickly. I knew from the start that there would be a commotion at this engagement party. That's why I had asked my mother to come from New York to take care of Lily. Lily, who had been silently sensing the tension, was overjoyed by the surprise. But that wasn't the only surprise. I had another one ready for Nancy and John. I entrusted Lily to my mother and decided to watch how things would unfold for them. These are not fake tears. They will soon be shedding real ones. I returned alone to my in-laws' house, sat down, and peeked into the room through a certain method.
All right, let's restart the engagement party.
Nancy, now completely dried of her tears, clapped her hands.
Come on, John. Stop moping. It's okay. Since Bob is getting married, the new bride will balance things out. As long as we have sweet Callie, that's all the Austen family needs. Forget about that strong-willed May, and let's celebrate.
The atmosphere was utterly dreadful. No matter how much Nancy's cheerful voice echoed, it couldn't lift the mood. The colorful balloons swayed desolately.
I don't care about John anymore. Do whatever you want.
Nancy sulked, not even bothering to show a hint of kindness to her very own son, who had just been given divorce papers.
All right, let's get the party back on track. Bob, Kelly, I'm sorry. The younger son's wife disrupted the party. Our younger son has always been a bit slow. Oh, we shouldn't have invited such kids. What a disgrace to the Austin family. But our eldest, Bob, is good at both academics and sports, kind, and a wonderful child. You're sure to be happy once you guys get married. You have a good eye, Kelly.
As she was her favorite son's wife, Kelly was unconditionally liked by Nancy. Normally, one would be happy to be liked by their fiance's parents, but Kelly's face showed confusion, unable to even muster a smile. Only the corner of her mouth twitched slightly.
Thank you, Kelly, for deciding to marry Bob. Let's become a happy family.
Nancy was the only one in high spirits. Even with me and Lily gone and John feeling down, it didn't matter to her. As long as she had her beloved Bob, she was probably satisfied. Bob and Kelly exchanged glances for a while. After seeming to make a decision, Bob opened his mouth.
We're not family.
Huh?
Nancy's smile froze.
When we get married, I'll take Kelly's surname.
Huh? Why?
Nancy's smiling face asked fearfully.
Why? Because I want to keep my distance from you.
What?
Nancy couldn't move, her smile stuck, with sweat beading on her forehead.
You've always gotten angry if I didn't do exactly as you expected. I had to score 100 on tests, be a starting member in the soccer team, and run for student council president. It was tough. Even after I get married, you'll try to create the perfect son and daughter-in-law. I'm done with it.
Nancy raised her sons by comparing their achievements. She never imagined that the son she favored, Bob, would abandon her.
So that's why Kelly won't become part of the Austin family. We're going to start a new life together, so think of us as no longer family.
Nancy, who had been so talkative, lost her words. Her finally collapsing smile twisted into a pained expression, looking incredibly ugly. With wrinkles covering her face, she suddenly seemed decades older, like a wicked old woman from a fairy tale. Staggering and dragging her feet, she reached out as if seeking help. Bob, who was right in front of her, swiftly stepped aside. Nancy, thrown off balance, fell to the floor.
Oh.
Her hoarse crying echoed. Tears are such a cheap tactic. Especially elderly tears, which make her seem even more pitiable. But then I heard a small, muttering voice.
I won't forgive the woman who seduced my Bob. I won't recognize her as a daughter-in-law. No matter how far she runs, I'll bully and torment her until she leaves Bob.
The tiny bit of sympathy I had, about 0.001%, vanished.
All these wives are trash. John, too, got caught by a strong-willed woman. Why can't my sons find a docile woman? Any woman who can give me grandkids would do. Why can't they get a woman who doesn't talk back?
Voicing her thoughts only seemed to fuel her frustration. Unable to hold back, Nancy wailed loudly. Her nails dug into the rug, and she cried and howled like a beast, shaking all over.
Bob, don't abandon your mother. A marriage of a disrespectful son won't be blessed by anyone.
Nancy desperately tried to hold on to Bob.
I'm not looking for blessings.
Bob looked down at Nancy, who was clinging to his leg, without a hint of emotion.
I knew that by planning this, I'd be cutting ties not just with you, Mom, but with the rest of the family too.
Bob, looking sad, prompted Nancy.
You must be really mad at me, huh? Then go ahead and tell the relatives. Tell them how you've been mistreated by me.
Nancy, with her face soaked in tears, turned even redder. She took the bait and, breathing heavily, dashed to the landline phone in the corner of the living room.
What? The receiver is off.
Muttering to herself, Nancy forcefully replaced the receiver. Just as she was about to pick it up again, the phone rang. Startled, Nancy reflexively answered it.
What? What is going on here?
A thundering voice boomed from the receiver. Nancy, shocked, dropped the phone. Even so, the voice was loud enough to be heard clearly. It was the meddlesome uncle who often gave me unwanted lectures.
I don't want to see your disgrace live stream. I was looking forward to celebrating Bob's new beginning, but how can I enjoy a drink watching you bully your daughter-in-law?
Not understanding why the relatives were yelling at her, Nancy fearfully hung up the phone. But as soon as she placed the receiver down, it rang again. As a frightened Nancy tried to pull her hand away, she accidentally dropped the receiver.
Finally got through. Hey, how long do you plan to keep this live stream going?
Another relative's call. The voice was so loud with excitement that it echoed through the room without a speakerphone.
What are you live streaming? Just stop it already.
Bob scratched his head and grinned.
Oh, Mom, I forgot to tell you. We've been live streaming this room to all the relatives today.
Huh.
I thought everyone should see my engagement party.
Huh. Live streaming?
Not understanding why the relatives were yelling or what Bob meant by live streaming, Nancy looked dazed, her mouth agape. It's time to reveal the truth. I moved and quietly opened the door in front of me. Kelly stood awkwardly. Next to her was Bob, grinning. Nancy, unable to stand, had collapsed. Tom remained at the table, trying to stay invisible. The people who had been watching on the small screen of my smartphone all turned their gazes toward me at once. They must have been surprised to see the person they had kicked out as not family suddenly opening the door and entering. John, who had been staring blankly, finally regained his senses.
Oh, May, you're back.
At this point, he found an absurd glimmer of hope and was pathetically overjoyed. Ignoring him, I decided to explain the meaning of the live stream to Nancy. I raised my smartphone so that Nancy and the others could see the screen.
What me? Wait, our house. This room. Why am I on your phone?
I thought she would understand immediately, but she seemed even more confused. There is a camera in this room. It's recording and streaming so that all the relatives can watch. It's like a live TV broadcast.
Live broadcast.
She finally grasped the situation. Nancy panicked and snatched the smartphone from me. She threw it forcefully onto the floor.
Broadcasting something like a TV show. I don't get it. I'll just do this.
She stomped on the phone with all her might. If she were wearing shoes, it might have been more effective, but she was in slippers. Besides, destroying my phone wouldn't stop the live stream. The screen hadn't even cracked, but it just happened to go dark. Nancy, with her hair disheveled, stopped her stomping, satisfied.
Trying to disgrace me when you're such a useless daughter-in-law is 100 years too soon. I stomped and destroyed your phone.
Nancy proudly kicked the dark-screened phone for show.
TV broadcast? I knew I'd find the city-bred daughter-in-law annoying. There was no way John, who's second-rate at everything, would have chosen a good wife. I knew from the start you were a nasty woman.
Triumphant, Nancy laughed loudly. I raised my eyebrows and asked her meekly, "Is that why you've been harassing me?" Nancy shrugged and laughed evilly.
Yes, so what? You just now realized I don't like you? How slow can you be? On top of being useless, it was hard work for me to keep calling you and making you do chores all the time. And I even made your expensive, arrogant bag more fashionable with ketchup. And the tea I served you was always old. In fact, that tea was made 3 days ago and left out in the sun just for you. A special treat for May.
Nancy, now blood red with anger, confessed all her misdeeds. What, you even messed with the tea? That's terrible, Nancy.
Who cares what happens to John's wife? And if you got sick and became useless, maybe Bob would finally feel that he would need to find a wife for the family. It was a great idea if I do say so myself.
It seemed my endurance had made her harassment less enjoyable. So that's why John always got sick after visiting your house.
What?
I exaggerated my surprise, making my face contort. Nancy frowned in displeasure. Yes, I noticed my tea had a sour smell and thought it was strange. I'm not a fan of sour things, but John likes vinegar, so I always swapped our teas. Nancy's face contorted as if she were smelling something rotten. Ah, so that's what you did. Maybe John was too dull to notice. Nancy bit her lip. Suddenly, I remembered something and exclaimed, "Oh, by the way, Bob swapped the tea today." I cheerfully told her, and Nancy stiffened in shock. She rushed to Bob, knocking his teacup out of his hand and tossing it into the yard. It was a swift and impressive move, like defusing a bomb. Nancy, now with a caring mother's expression, caressed Bob's cheek.
You didn't drink it, Bob. You didn't drink this spoiled tea.
Bob replied curtly.
I didn't.
Relief spread through Nancy. She felt weak and tried to lean on Bob, but Bob didn't support her, letting her collapse to the floor. He looked down at her.
You served something to May that you couldn't even give to me. This goes beyond mere harassment.
Nancy shrank visibly.
Mom, that's the worst.
His cold words made Nancy dizzy, and she held her head, crying.
No, I didn't mean it that way. It was just a prank. I'm sorry, May.
As she apologized, I heard her muttering. I picked up my phone and checked the stream. Nancy's grumbling was clear.
How dare John's wife? If Bob hates me, it's her fault. I won't forgive her.
Even as she desperately apologized, she was still muttering curses behind her breath.
Oh, it's all John's fault for coming back home, bringing such a nasty wife with him.
I turned up the volume so Bob could hear. Even Bob looked exasperated as Nancy still hadn't learned her lesson. Nancy, who had been lying on the floor crying, lifted her head. She seemed confused, hearing her own words echoing back at her. When she realized I was watching the video on my phone, she was shocked.
I thought I broke your phone. Why is it still showing?
She tried to get up but was hit with a wave of dizziness and couldn't stand. Holding her forehead, she continued to shout insults.
You nasty wife. I was just trying to educate you because your personality is so twisted. Calling it harassment is just making me look bad. This is why I hate women from the city with no patience.
Her rant echoed almost simultaneously from my phone. Finally, Nancy fell silent.
If it's showing, then that means it's still broadcasting live. No, that's not right. It's all May's fault for making a fool out of me.
Nancy realized it was still alive. At this point, any excuses would be too late. Breaking my phone doesn't stop the camera filming the room. I explained lightly, but Nancy didn't understand. She used the last of her strength to stand and reached for my phone. Bob stepped in to stop her.
Stop it. Everyone has been watching your true nature from the start. Even if you cry, no one will take your side.
Nancy covered her face with her hands, repeating, "No, no." Actually, the flower corsage Bob had given her at the beginning of the party had a small microphone hidden inside. With the mic on her chest, even Nancy's quietest words were clearly picked up.
That wife set me up.
Bob spoke to Nancy, who was still muttering resentfully.
Like I said before, I decided to do this live stream. I just wanted everyone to see my happy engagement party. But instead, everyone saw the embarrassment that you are. I'm disgusted by how you've treated May all this time.
Bob,
Nancy, losing blood from her face, looked devastated as Bob expressed his contempt.
I was right to make this choice. I can't stand the thought of you harassing Kelly just because she's your daughter-in-law. Not only will I take Kelly's surname, but I'm also cutting ties with you completely.
no, Bob.
Bob walked over to the camera on the shelf, looked into the lens, and bowed his head.
I apologize for the unpleasant scene. Will anyone still blame me or May after seeing this? Well, May and I are cutting ties with the Austin family, so it doesn't matter what the outsiders say.
Bob smiled weakly. It was clear that just because someone cries doesn't mean they're the victim. He turned off the camera, ending the live stream. Nancy, devastated by her exposure and being abandoned by Bob, pounded the floor and wailed.
There's nothing to celebrate here. Let's go.
Bob prompted Kelly and me. We nodded and followed Bob out of the living room.
May I?
John tried to follow us, but I shot him a fierce glare. Your beloved mother is crying.
Oh,
John, with a gloomy expression, neither followed me nor comforted Nancy, but just slumped his shoulders. Tom, barely in my line of sight, was burying his face in his plate, trying to avoid reality. No one offered a hand to Nancy in her suffering. Her screams, which sounded like the end of the world, echoed as she fell into complete despair. Afterwards, Nancy's facade of being a meek victim was stripped away, and she was ostracized by all the relatives. Of course, the criticism also came toward Bob and me, but Nancy's true nature was so shocking that everyone focused their anger on her.
Claiming to be bullied by the daughter-in-law when she was the real bully all along. Truly a disgrace to the Austin family.
By the way, the Austin family isn't particularly prestigious. Encouraged by relatives to just dump that woman, Tom decided to get a divorce.
Divorce at this age, it's all that nasty wife's fault.
No matter how much she cursed me, it didn't make her future any brighter. Nancy forced herself into her brother's house. There, she's being harshly treated, or as she puts it, educated by her sister-in-law. She has no money, no job, and no one to rely on, so she can't escape. As a result, she has to endure being ordered around by her sister-in-law. Meanwhile, Tom, now divorced and alone, makes this ridiculous demand of me.
Since your mother-in-law is gone, you, as my daughter-in-law, should take care of me.
I couldn't help but gape in disbelief. According to him, Nancy was the bad one, he, the bystander, wasn't at fault. When I was in a weak position, he laughed along with them. But when I started to fight back, he desperately tried to disappear. What a coward. I have no obligation to take care of Tom. He kept contacting me for a while, but I ignored all his messages. Tom, apparently unable to even take out the trash, let garbage pile up in the yard, causing a foul smell and attracting insects. Despite the terrible state, the relatives turned a blind eye. They saw Tom as one of Nancy's cronies. Stubborn as he is, Tom can't even ask for help and remains in his dimly lit house. John, having broken free from his blind devotion to Nancy, has regained his sanity. He now strongly desires to repair our relationship.
I was just thrilled to finally beat my brother. I thought offering you and Lily to Mom was the ultimate filial piety. I'm so sorry, May. I'll never hurt you again. Let's start over.
Though I still remember the kind John, the painful memories outweigh them. I'll focus on raising Lily with all my love. So you take care of Nancy.
I don't want to be involved with such a selfish mother.
I distanced myself from John, who was clinging desperately. Really? You forced me to take care of her, but now you want to avoid her?
Oh no.
Wives and children don't exist for filial piety. I don't need a husband who can't wish for his family's happiness. A broken relationship can't be mended. Who broke it? John bit his lip, unable to respond. I didn't want to talk to him any longer, so I left without waiting for an answer. As for Bob and Kelly, no one knows where they are. Initially, people said they ran away from their parents, but now they say, it's no wonder they abandoned such parents. I was the only one who eventually received news that they were living peacefully far away. With Bob, who can protect his wife from harmful parents, they will surely build a happy home. On the other hand, I successfully divorced John with the help of a lawyer. Now all ties with the Austen family are completely severed. Lily and I returned to my family home in New York and started a new life. I dragged Lily into the conflicts and made her worry a lot, but lately, she's finally stopped trying to read the adults' moods.
Hey Mom, let's go camping during summer vacation. I want to fish in the river too.
I regretted moving to John's hometown where nothing good happened. But I'm glad that Lily developed a love for nature. Without any ill feelings toward the countryside, she often asks to go camping or fishing during breaks. Though I'm busy with work and raising her, being surrounded by nature brings peace to my heart. Under the blue sky, Lily's smile seems even more radiant.